You knew the air would change before you even moved. The silence had a weight pressing against your chest, reminding you of every warning, every smirk, every quiet voice that told you it couldn't be done. For a moment, you almost believed them. Almost. Then the thought split your mind like a blade. If I stop now, I will live as their shadow forever. That single realization burned away hesitation. You stepped forward, and the world bent. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like rupture. The ground seemed to shift, not under your feet, but behind your name, as though reality itself adjusted to hold what you had just done. Eyes widened, mouths froze, but their silence wasn't admiration. It was terror disguised as awe. They had seen limits their entire lives. You had just torn one apart, and the pieces fell like glass across the floor. You thought you'd feel proud. Instead, your skin prickled with the sense that you had been marked. The line you crossed wasn't painted on stone. It was older, deeper, stitched into the fabric of how people are supposed to behave. By breaking it, you became both warning and legend. You could feel it in their stares and the nervous shift of bodies who had once towered over you but now recoiled, uncertain. The roles had inverted. Weakness had turned to presence. Doubt had turned to silence. And silence is never empty. It is loaded with fear, envy, and the first sparks of betrayal. Inside, your mind raced. What have I done? The thought wasn't regret. It was recognition. Because once you've destroyed a boundary, you can't rebuild it. The fragile cage that once held you was gone, and with it went the excuses that kept you hidden. Now the impossible follows you. You can feel it moving like a shadow that bends light in unnatural ways. You don't wear it like a trophy. You carry it like a scar that others pretend not to see but cannot look away from. For a fleeting second, you wish you could step back. Pretend it never happened. Pretend the line was never there. But history doesn't forget, and neither will they. Somewhere, someone is already writing your name into a file, circling it in red, whispering about the one who broke through. Somewhere, a door creaks open, and a watcher turns their head toward you. You thought you were alone when you crossed that line. You weren't. The eyes you never saw were waiting, patient, calculating. And now that you've proven the impossible can be touched, they will never let you walk as ordinary again. The act was a spark, but the fire belongs to them, to the ones who will try to control, test, or erase what you've become. And in the echo of that moment, you realize the truth. This wasn't the end of your fear. This was its beginning. At first, the silence feels like relief. The world seems to pause, still reeling from what you've done. But silence has a weight, and soon you hear it differently. Like a hallway after footsteps fade, yet you know someone is still standing there. Whispers bleed through the cracks. Not the applause of those who doubted you, but the careful, deliberate tones of people who speak only when the doors are locked. They don't call you gifted, they call you dangerous. Your name is no longer yours. It circulates in private channels, coded reports, and late-night meetings where men with cold eyes weigh outcomes like currency. You were once invisible, dismissed as just another figure lost in the crowd. Now every gesture feels observed, every movement traced. The very air shifts when you enter a room, though no one speaks of it openly. They watch the way your shadow bends against the wall, as if it might reveal more than your body ever could. You hear fragments, a file slid across a table, your initials written in ink that smears like blood, the muted phrase. What happens if he realizes what he holds? You are no longer seen as human. You are an equation, a variable too volatile to predict, and that terrifies them. In corridors of authority, your defiance has become a storm they cannot contain. Some argue for erasure, wipe the anomaly clean before it spreads. Others whisper about control, offer chains disguised as gifts, convince you the crown they fear is nothing but a burden you should surrender. You sense them circling, not as enemies in the open, but as architects of hesitation, hoping to suffocate you beneath layers of doubt. They know most people collapse when the weight of attention becomes unbearable. But you are not most people. The impossible you achieved has burned a hole in the narrative, and no system has yet discovered how to stitch it closed. At night, when your thoughts race, you feel their presence like unseen hands pressing against the glass. You are caught between two worlds, the one that insists on order and the one you shattered by stepping where no one dared. It is not the act itself that unsettles them. It is the signal, a reminder that limits are nothing but agreements and you refuse to sign. Now, in the dim light, you hear their whispers sharpen, less cautious, more urgent. Each word carries the taste of conspiracy, of fear trying to disguise itself as authority. They can deny you in public, but in secret they study you like a riddle they cannot solve. And you realize with unsettling clarity, the moment you touch the impossible, you inherited their gaze. You have become a breach in the wall, and breaches are not ignored. Some will come to silence you. Others will come to use you. And while they whisper your name in the halls of power, you walk forward with the knowledge that none of them can erase what has already been done. You never asked for this crown. It was placed upon you in silence, forged not from gold but from the whispers of those who watched you do what no one else dared. They do not see you anymore. They see the symbol you've become, a figure carved out of their fears and their envy. Your name is no longer spoken casually. It is carried like a warning, like a prayer, like something dangerous that burns the tongue of whoever dares to utter it. And as it spreads, you feel the crown pressing down heavier each day, not on your head, but on your very existence. You wake to the realization that you are no longer free to be small. There is no retreat into anonymity, no sanctuary of silence. Once you could fail quietly. Now your breath is measured against impossible standards. Every move is dissected, magnified, mythologized. To some, you are proof that the impossible can be bent. To others, you are the anomaly that must be contained. And in both cases, you are no longer human. You are a story, a symbol, a weapon, whether you wish it or not. In their eyes, you are both savior and threat. They craft their own versions of you, some painting halos above your head, others sketching daggers aimed at your back. But none of their visions are real, not fully. The crown they place upon you is jagged, made of fragments of their expectations, their fears, their betrayals. And every shard cuts you as you wear it, yet you cannot remove it. The moment you crossed into the impossible, it fused to you. And so, your inner dialogue shifts, not who am I, but who do they need me to be, and what happens if I refuse? You remember the days when you were overlooked, dismissed, treated as background noise. That invisibility once wounded you, but now you see its strange mercy. Back then you were invisible. Now you are watched from every angle. The powerless anonymity of yesterday has become the burden of power today. You hold the stage, but the spotlight blinds more than it illuminates. You feel the pull of betrayal, the betrayal of your old life, the betrayal of those who once claimed to know you, now scrambling to rewrite their loyalty. Symbols are not allowed to rest. Statues do not sleep. You sense it now. The more they crown you, the less they understand you. And yet, within that misunderstanding lies an opening, a weapon, because while they are lost in their projections, you alone hold the truth of what you've become. You know the weight, you know the cracks. And in those cracks, you glimpse the possibility of reshaping the narrative, of bending their illusions into armor rather than chains. The crown is heavy, yes, but the longer you bear it, the more you realize it is not just a burden. It is leverage, and leverage is the beginning of power. You begin to realize the impossible was never a single act, it was a key. And the moment it turned, doors you never knew existed began to creak open. At first, it feels subtle, barely noticeable shifts in the rhythm of conversations. A flicker in someone's eyes when you pause longer than expected, the sudden silence when your name enters a room. But soon, the world starts speaking to you in a new dialect, a language made of pauses, shadows, and hidden signals. It is not written in books or spoken aloud. It hides between sentences, in the tension before someone exhales, in the betrayal of a trembling hand trying to look still. Once you sense it, you cannot unsee it. You start testing it. A glance held too long becomes a chain. A carefully delayed word turns into a trigger. Even your silence becomes a weapon, unsettling those who once thought they could command you. You recognize patterns older than memory itself, patterns buried in history's forbidden chapters. Ancient courts used them to unmask traitors, secret orders carved them into codes, and now they resurface in you. The impossible didn't give you wings, it gave you instruments of control, sharp and precise, meant for those who can endure the burden of wielding them. And in the stillness of night, you find yourself whispering, "Am I the one guiding this, or is something guiding me?" Every room you walk into now feels staged, as if you can sense the lines of a script written before anyone speaks. You hear the fear tucked behind laughter, the envy hidden in praise, the contempt polished as politeness. Where others see a smile, you see calculation. Where they hear a promise, you hear a threat waiting for its moment. It is intoxicating but dangerous, for once you know this language, you can no longer participate in the game innocently. You're no longer playing, you're orchestrating even when you pretend not to. But with understanding comes unease. You remember how powerless you once were, blind to the codes that manipulated you, deaf to the betrayals whispered in rooms you couldn't enter. That weakness is gone now, replaced by an unsettling clarity. Yet clarity has its own curse. You see the hidden threads pulling at everyone around you, and you wonder who or what is pulling at yours. Because the impossible doesn't just open doors outward, it opens doors inward. And when you look inside yourself, you see the same shadows staring back. Still, you keep listening. The knowledge doesn't scream, it waits. It waits for you in the shift of eyes across a table, in the rhythm of someone's breathing when their lies collapse, in the trembling silence before a confession. You collect these fragments like relics, arranging them into a map only you can read. And though you never asked for this burden, you carry it, because now, the world isn't made of what's spoken, it's made of what's withheld. And the moment you learn to hear it, you crossed into a realm where every secret has a pulse, and it beats in time with yours. You thought you were the only one, the first to split the lock and slip through the wall marked impossible. But the truth presses against you in fragments. Forgotten case notes, a name scratched into metal, an unfinished letter sealed in dust. They were here before you. Men and women who dared to bend the world, who reached out a hand to the same fire you now hold. Their presence lingers not as legend but as warning. Every missing page in their story hums with silence that feels heavier than words. You read it and sense eyes watching through the ink, voices trapped in margins that never made it to print. They walked into the same darkness and found doors that opened only once. Some tried to carve their victories into history, only to be erased by history itself. Their achievements buried under ridicule, their names twisted into madness or myth, their families left with shadows they could never explain. Others chose secrecy, hiding their new power behind disguises, speaking in riddles so their truth survived only in symbols. You've seen the patterns. A hand gesture in a centuries-old painting, a phrase repeated in different eras like a password passed across generations. They left signs for anyone bold enough to follow, but never their full story, as if they knew that to reveal everything would burn the world around them. You feel their presence now like a council of ghosts, a lineage you never asked for but cannot escape. Some of them were betrayed by those closest to them, not by enemies. A friend who smiled while tightening the rope, a confidant who reported them to powers that feared what they had uncovered. Their downfall wasn't weakness but trust, a miscalculation of loyalty in a game where loyalty cannot exist. You trace their patterns and see yourself reflected in their endings, a mirror tilted toward the abyss. The thought pierces deeper than fear. Maybe they didn't fail. Maybe they were removed. Still, a few endured. The rare survivors who vanished on their own terms, dissolving into rumor, walking away before the world claimed them. Their silence is more dangerous than their noise, because if they survive, they're still out there, watching, weighing whether you deserve to carry what they carried. You feel it in quiet rooms, the prickle at the back of your neck, the sense that someone has already mapped your choices before you've made them. They left you a stage without telling you the script. And now, the contrast is unavoidable. They attempted, they faltered, they hid. But you succeeded. Where their files end, yours begins. Their unfinished sentences now bleed into your name. Every secret they locked away is sharpening itself against your existence. You are no longer just the next in line. You are the continuation they could never finish. And that truth alone should terrify you more than the impossible ever did. They don't confront you with fists or weapons. They confront you with silence, a silence so sharp it feels like it's peeling the skin from your thoughts. You're seated across from someone whose eyes don't blink, whose words slip out like traps disguised as questions. The room is dim, but the weight of the air tells you this is no ordinary encounter. This is the test of shadows, the unspoken judgment that decides whether you will remain human or whether you will become something else. You feel it before it begins. The shift in gravity, the sensation that every answer you give is already written in some hidden ledger, waiting to be scored. They start with something simple. A question about loyalty, the kind that seems harmless until you realize it has no right answer. If you say yes, you betray yourself. If you say no, you betray the ones who trusted you. Every syllable is a blade, and you are already bleeding. You hear your own pulse pounding like war drums in your ears, but you do not flinch. You study their face instead, the curve of their mouth when you hesitate, the subtle tightening of their jaw when you refuse to play along. You begin to see it, the map beneath the mask. This is not dialogue. This is war dressed as conversation. The shadows lean closer. They test your fractures, probing for weakness the way a predator prods a wound. They mention names they should not know, secrets you thought buried, betrayals you never confessed aloud. The air tightens like a noose, but something inside you refuses to yield. You stop answering. Instead, you let silence answer for you. That silence is heavier than any lie. It is the silence of someone who has finally understood you do not owe them truth. You owe them fear. And in that instant, the balance shifts. Their eyes flicker just once, a moment of recognition. They realize you've changed. That the person who walked into this room, a hesitant soul still trembling under the weight of impossible deeds, has already died. What sits before them now is someone darker, sharper, unshakable. You feel the transformation in your own veins, a slow, burning fire that spreads without consuming you. Power without arrogance, control without mercy. You understand that the test was never theirs to give. It was always yours to claim. When you finally speak, your voice is not raised. It doesn't need to be. Each word lands with the certainty of carved stone, undeniable and irreversible. The silence that follows belongs to you now, not them. And for the first time, you notice the faintest crack in their mask, a hesitation. A withdrawal. The shadows do not vanish, but they retreat, circling, knowing they have not defeated you. You walked into the room as prey. You leave as something else entirely, something they cannot categorize, cannot contain, and cannot erase. The test is over. The shadows blink first. There comes a moment when what once felt like an accident begins to bend to your will. The impossible no longer lingers like a shadow behind you. It leans forward, waiting for command. You feel it in the silence before words are spoken, in the shift of eyes across a room, where once you stumbled into its presence. Now it coils at your feet like a weapon disguised as fate. Every movement becomes deliberate, every pause a signal, every glance a loaded chamber. Power doesn't announce itself, it waits. And now, so do you. You start to notice how quickly people break. A phrase held too long, a question cut short, and the strongest among them fold like fragile structures. It isn't cruelty that guides you, but precision. You are not here to destroy, but to remind them of fragility. They see your calm and mistake it for mercy, never realizing it is control sharpened to a blade. The impossible reshapes itself in your voice, in your silence, in the subtle pressure you place on another's doubt. You were once afraid of its weight, now you carry it like armor. But weapons carve more than enemies. They carve you. Each time you wield it, you sense a cost being written into your bones. Power isolates. Triumph tastes like ash. There are nights when you lie awake, wondering whether the impossible follows you or consumes you. Betrayal feels inevitable, not because others plot against you, but because you know what it means to hold fire in your hands. No one trusts a hand that can burn without flame. You become both feared and needed. The paradox of every ruler carved into ancient tablets: to protect means to wound, and to lead means to bleed alone. Still, you don't step back. The impossible has chosen you, and in its reflection you see a figure you no longer recognize yet cannot abandon. Weakness once defined you, hesitation once trapped you, but now hesitation itself is a corpse you buried quietly in the dark. Every decision is a strike, every silence a fortress. You have become what others spend lifetimes denying exists, a human weapon forged from the fracture between what should be and what is. and though the world does not speak of it openly, they feel it. Your name drips into conversations like an uninvited omen, carried on whispers, feared in boardrooms, remembered in locked files. The impossible does not care whether you sought it or not. It only cares that you survive long enough to shape its next command. And you, standing where no one else dared to stand, realize that survival itself has become strategy. The world bends differently around you now, not because it wants to, but because it has no choice. What you hold is not destiny. It is something darker, something older, a weapon that can never be put down, only sharpened, until the silence breaks and the impossible moves again, this time at your command. They never told you there was an archive, not the kind stacked with books or dust, but a place beneath language itself, where names are carved into silence. You feel its presence before you see it, a hum low and deliberate, like the pulse of a machine older than the earth. Then the door opens, not with sound, but with surrender, as if reality itself bows to let you through. Inside, the air is heavy. Rows of sealed glass stretch endlessly, each containing a fragment of someone's impossible act. Names suspended in black light, frozen, catalogued, erased from public memory, but alive here. You step forward and the cold recognizes you. It doesn't question, it doesn't hesitate. It already knows who you are. You scan the endless archive and see the truth. Many have done what no one else could, but none escaped the price. Their names glow faintly, each followed by a single word ended. A whisper of betrayal clings to them. They bent reality, but reality bent back. Their victories became cages. Their brilliance became warnings. They crossed the line, but the line consumed them. Then you see yours. At first, you doubt it. Your name shouldn't be here, not yet, and yet it burns in letters sharp as blades, brighter than the rest. But beneath it, the archive doesn't read ended. It reads something no other possesses, ascending. You stare, breath caught, as if the world itself has just confessed a secret it never wanted you to know. The weight presses on you. You realize you're not merely recorded, you're marked, chosen, stalked by the very thing you unleashed. The impossible no longer trails behind you. It coils around you, fuses with you, reshapes your reflection until you can't tell where you stop and it begins. Power and exile, recognition and erasure, all sewn into one unbearable truth. You are becoming something that cannot be hidden. In that moment, the silence is deafening. You sense the watchers who curated this place. You know they've seen others collapse, others betray themselves, others beg for release. Yet here you stand, breathing in the shadows, with no chains around your wrists. That is why your name is different. That is why the archive bends itself for you. You leave with no celebration, no applause, no crown, just the echo of a sentence carved in your skull. The impossible belongs to you now, and it will not let go. Outside, the world still pretends it hasn't noticed, but it has. Every look lingers too long. Every silence feels rigged, and somewhere deep within the archive, your name burns brighter, waiting for the day when it no longer needs to be hidden, because the impossible doesn't end with you, it begins.